Hi, I'm Donna Reish with Character Inc. Press and Raising Kids with Character Parenting Seminar. I am going to be presenting to you 32 organizing and scheduling tips from 32 years of homeschooling. Now, I have some notes here that I'm going to be checking out, and I'm going to be going through these notes as I present to you. So I was asked to give this presentation for a local moms group, Moms Homeschooling Support Group, and I was excited to do it because organizing and scheduling are really my two great loves. So among many, I have a lot of loves. And so I just wanted to dig right into the 32 organizing and scheduling tips. Now, hopefully, you will have the handout that my assistant will put at the bottom of the video, and you can follow along with me as I go through the handout. So anyway, I want to dig right in because 32 tips is a lot to cover in 45 minutes. So anyway, first of all, I want to start with a quote by Winnie the Pooh, which is so appropriate for homeschoolers. We all love Winnie the Pooh. But this quote is especially poignant to the topic of organizing and scheduling. And it is, organizing is what you do before you do something, so that when you do it, it is not all mixed up. So what that's saying is that you do whatever organizing there is that you need to do in order for something to be successful. And there's no place that this is truer than in homeschooling, right? Whatever we do ahead of time to ensure our success later on will be that much more effective in our homeschooling and in our scheduling and in our organizing. So first of all, I want to start out with, what kind of schedule are you? Through the years in homeschooling, 32 years, when we first began, you know, it was pretty cookie cutter. Everybody was doing pretty much the same thing. And you got together with a very small group of people, and whatever anybody was doing in that group that was working, everybody did it. And so consequently, we kind of developed this is the only way to do it mindset. And this is a real problem when you try to help others with homeschooling, because not everybody fits into that mold. And not everybody is going to want that same exact schedule that worked for you. And so first of all, I'd like to start by saying that there's not a right or a wrong way to schedule your homeschooling day. There's not a right or wrong way to set up your academics, your home management, your schedule throughout the day. It's not that this moment by moment schedule that everybody keeps exactly, perfectly to a T is better than a block schedule in which there's just a time period and these are the goals for that time period. It's not that one is better than the other, but we have a tendency to think, well, the more organized, the more down to the minute it is, the more structured it is, the better. And that's not really true. Just like you have all different kinds of people, you also have all different kinds of organizing methods. So to say that one is the perfect and great way and the other one is bad because it's not as whatever is really a misnomer. The ultimate goal is that you meet your priorities. The ultimate goal is that you have a successful homeschool. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of scheduler am I that makes that happen? Now, this is not to say that you shouldn't seek for organizational skills or that you should not try to become more organized, more orderly, even more structured if that's what you need. It's not to say that you shouldn't do those things, but it's just to say that if you do something, your schedule more loosely than somebody else, that doesn't mean that you are a bad homeschooler. What really boils down to making somebody successful isn't the type of schedule that's moment by moment, etc., but it's what schedule and what method will work for you to meet your goals. So if you say, well, I'm not an organizer, I'm not a scheduler, you know, I don't want to do that moment by moment thing, that is perfectly fine. And you should feel okay with that. As long as whatever method you are using, if you say you're loosey-goosey or whatever that might be, that method meets your goals. It's when we say, well, I'm not that kind of person, so I'm not going to organize in that way. I'm not going to structure my school in that way, in my home, my daily routine. I'm not going to structure it in that way. It's when you say, I'm not going to do it that way because I'm not that kind of person, but yet everything falls by the wayside because you haven't adopted any type of structure, or you haven't even necessarily honed the way that you do like to do things. So it's not that there's a right and wrong way. It's that the right way is whatever way will cause you to meet your goals, whatever way will cause you to meet your priorities. And that's why I think it's really important as homeschoolers that we are learners, that we're lifelong learners, that we are eclectic in our methodology, that we can listen to this person and this workshop and this book and this speaker. And we can take all of these things together and find what really works for us. Those are really the keys to successful organizing and scheduling. So I kind of broken it down by the day, by the time of day, just very loosely, just to try to put them in all the different tips and things into a little bit of an order. So I want to start with ahead of time. Going back to that right or wrong way. Whether you are a daily lesson plan kind of person where everything is moment by moment, or you have a looser framework, deciding that ahead of time and sticking with it is going to be the best way for you to succeed in your homeschool organization and scheduling. I talk a little bit later, but I'll bring it up here just as like an option other than the daily lesson plan with moment by moment is the block scheduling technique. I am an organizer and I am a scheduler, but yet I still love the block scheduling technique. And that is where I broke the day down into blocks of time frame blocks. And this was early morning, mid-morning, late morning, noontime, early afternoon, late afternoon, dinner hour, early evening, late evening, and whatever block. It was usually about a 90-minute block that I can look at a glance and say, okay, this is our early morning block. This is our chores, our breakfast, our morning routines, our morning devotions together, our private devotions, whatever. That's that block. The next block is our read aloud meeting time. The next block is our independent work, meet with mom block. The next block is our chores, lunch, and story time block, and so forth. So rather than going moment by moment, I looked at the big picture and saw what were the goals that I wanted to achieve during that block of time. Now, in order to help me achieve this, I definitely used number 2, independent sheets. That is, every child had independent lists for every day. And it had our schedule on it, our block scheduling, and then it had lists of things that the child was supposed to do. Now, this independent sheet is a workshop all in itself. So I will put links in the handout for the independent sheets because I actually have a video about using independent sheets, and then I have some printables, some downloadables that you can also use to develop independent sheets for your kids. But independent sheets are crucial in order to keep your kids working all the time on their list while you are doing other things with other kids, with babies and toddlers, one-on-one meetings, meal preps, and so forth. All right, the next thing is chore sessions. Now, these again are ahead of time. These are things that you want to try to get set up ahead of time so that your days run more smoothly. The blog is packed with chore things. I mean, I'll bet there are 50 posts on chores alone at the blog. And we also have some downloadables for that too. We have the chore sessions. We have like some podcasts and some videos of that. Those would be under Wondering Wednesday. And then we also have our age-appropriate chore posters that are available at our store. So one of the things that I wanted to say about chore sessions is that the most important thing you can do with chores is to find the exact way that works for you. Like, this is just like scheduling your homeschool day in that there are a variety of ways to set up chores. But one of the things that we learned early on from 32 years ago, even when our now 34-year-old was just 2 years old, we learned the importance of having children involved in our daily work, involved in chores throughout the day, spread out over the day, so that the workload wasn't carried by just one person, and so that mom would have the time to homeschool all day long and have that freedom. Not that I didn't do any chores, because there are so many chores that only mom can do, but that rather anybody that was able to do any chores would be included in the chore schedule. I will just briefly tell you, our chore sessions were 20 to 30 minutes before each meal. So we had chore session 1, chore session 2, chore session 3. The reason that I like this chore session is setup is because everybody was doing chores at the exact same time. I like that a lot better than having a chart where sometime throughout the day, fingers crossed, everybody does their jobs. I like this better because everything is getting done at the same time. Everybody is working on the same thing at the same time. And so that ensured that during that chore session, this master list was completed. And then during the next chore session, this master list was completed. And so that was the beauty of the chore sessions before each meal. Another beauty of it was that we were able to have the chore session set up in such a way that the 20 to 30 minutes before breakfast, we had a cook, we had a laundry person, we had a dishes and trash person, we had a weekly, like a daily cleaning of the bathrooms person. Depends how many persons you have. But the beauty of that is that everything is getting done all at the same time. And at the end of that, it's the meal. And so rather than saying, all morning, go out and fix breakfast to somebody, it's all already in place. So there's a lot more at the blog about that, but I encourage you to be sure that chores are set up ahead of time so that your days will go much more smoothly. Next ahead of time is what I call the weeklies. There are certain things that have to be done every week. Now, in this, I actually had 2 lists. One was my weekly constances that I called them. That meant that these things were done every week, all the time. And they were always in place. And they were things like vacuuming and dusting and mopping and cleaning the bathrooms weekly, those type of things. They were, library trips. They were anything that didn't happen every day, but things that did have to happen every week. And those were my weekly constances. Then I had my running weekly list for next week. So that's why this is ahead of time. So I have this weekly constant list, and then I have this weekly for next week list. And rather than trying to put each thing that I knew needed to happen next week on a certain day, it didn't get carried out, move it to the next day and so forth, I used what I called my ABC method. And the ABC method means that beside everything on the weekly list that I was making, whether it was, order new coat for somebody, return library videos, oh man, there's so many things that could go on your weekly list. Send these letters, schedule the dentist appointment, whatever. Now my weekly list is packed full of writing and business projects because now I have a couple of home businesses and of course the family ministry that I have here on the blog too. But with that, then rather than worrying about what day it is, I just put an A, B, or C. So A meant that it needed done next week. B meant that I wanted to get to it next week. And C meant dream on, Donna. That's not happening. Now, before I get too far into this even, I would encourage you to use the ABC approach to all kinds of things. For example, one of the things that I would love to see you do is to print out this handout and to put beside it the things, beside each tip, the things that you want to remember, that you want to implement. And A, if you really, really want to, and only a couple of A's, maybe a few at the most. B, I want to revisit that later. It's important, but I don't have to do it right away. But these other things I really want to start doing because I think they'll make a big difference in my home. And C, I'd like to do that someday, but I know that's not for me right now. Or, maybe down the road, or I don't want to forget this, but it's not happening right now. You can apply the ABC method to everything. It's really simple to utilize, but it is an immediate prioritizing method. And so you don't have to necessarily put that weekly list down on each day. You just get those A's beside there so that when it's time for next week's comes around, you open that up, you're like, oh man, these are my A's, and I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit, but that's your ahead of time, your weeklies, and then your ABCs of those weeklies. Next, ahead of time, and this is far, far ahead of time, and this should have been at the beginning. Really funny because it's about prioritizing, so it's number 5, but it should have been number 1. Maybe I need some prioritizing help there. Anyway, it's kind of funny. Anyway, priorities are what you do. And we like to think of prioritizing as the ultimate organizer. In other words, prioritizing is really the epitome of organization, because if you meet your priorities, all organization falls into place so much easier. First of all, about that, priorities, you make these priorities lists, these lists of things that are important to you. And usually the problem with priorities is that they're very vague and they're very mystical, so to speak, and a little bit maybe out there and definitely too vague, but definitely not check off the list kind of things, right? Because priorities are like dreaming. You know, we all have these great goals and priorities. But then under your priorities, you have to list the actions to meet your priorities. If you don't list actions underneath your priorities, then they don't get done. And if you don't do something, it's not a priority, it's just a wish. And so whether you're trying to prioritize for your school year, prioritize for the next month, prioritize for the next month, year, week, prioritize your family goals, whatever it might be. My husband and I would sit down, we'd make out our priorities list, but we never stopped that meeting until we had the means by which we were going to meet our priorities listed underneath their priorities. And lastly, ahead of time is our change a week or change a month. We actually had great teaching when we were first married and when we just had small children. And I just amazingly blessed to think about that, the opportunities that we had. And one of those was a mentor who told us that we should set out to make a change a week or a change a month in our home. And with that, we set out to do that. Now, sometimes we made changes weekly, but looking back, no matter what, we realized that we actually did make a change a month. That is that every month or so, or every couple of weeks, we set out to change something in our home, to make it better. Whether it was something in our schedule, something in our marriage, something in our routine with our kids, something in our relationships with our kids, something in our family unity, something in our spiritual walk, something in our family fun, whatever it was, we set out to make a change. And the thing about it is when you are in the midst of the intense parenting and homeschooling, you think that little changes don't make any difference. You know, I was a big dreamer. I still am a big dreamer. And if I couldn't, you know, if I felt like if I could not do something huge, like, you know, make lots of changes or meet lots of goals, then why bother at all? And now I love to tell young parents that if you make one change a month, you have the opportunity to transform your family's life. As you see on the handout there, we homeschooled for 32 years. We made at least a change every month during those 32 years. At least some good thing happened in our home, something different, something we added, something we took away, something we improved. And as we did that for 32 years, that came up to 384 changes. Now, not everybody will homeschool for 32 years, I realize that. But let's suppose you homeschool for 20, which is definitely the average, I would say, that a person will homeschool if they have 2 or 3 children and they start from the beginning and homeschool through 12th grade. Even with that, let's do some easy math here. And let's say it's 20 years times only one change a month, not a week, one change a month. That is 240 changes. So now there is no way that you can think, looking at me and seeing that I made 384 positive changes in my home with my husband. There's no way that you can say that little things don't matter, because they do, and they add up to really, really big changes. All right, next I want to talk about the night before. The night before. It's really funny how this whole night before thing has come to be, and the whole concept of making changes and what is going to happen tomorrow based on what is happening tonight. 28 years ago or so, I can remember it was a Sunday night, and we had small group at our house all the time for many, many years on Sunday nights. And before the last people were about to leave, our little guy, I think is about 6 or so, our oldest child, said something to Ray about, Daddy, do we have to do, the cleanup tonight? And he was talking about like cleaning up for the small group and things. And Ray said, yes, we have to. We always want to do everything to make so that you and Mommy have a good day tomorrow. And then a gentleman was there listening. He said, "Oh, it's Sunday. You don't have to do any work tonight. It's Lord's Day. You can take off tonight. You can do the work tomorrow." And Ray said to this dad, he said, "Well, it might say in the Bible, to observe the Sabbath, but it also says that if you have an ox in your ditch, you need to go pull it out, even if it's the Sabbath." And after he left, Joshua was quizzing him about that further, and he said, son, what that means is that if we let you guys start out tomorrow morning with everything a mess and everything the way it is here now, we are leaving the ox in the ditch on Sunday, and it's going to get worse tomorrow. He's going to be dug deeper. It's going to be harder to pull him out. And instead, we're going to pull that ox out of the ditch tonight so that you have a good day with Mommy tomorrow. And then he said these words, which now contemporary homeschoolers take credit for all the time, and contemporary speakers and self-improvement people. But I like to think that it was really my husband 28 years ago when he said, "A good tomorrow starts tonight." And so with that, one of the best things you can do is make tomorrow good tonight. Don't let things that are in your way, things that are in your home, messes and things that are overwhelming tonight to be taken into a school day tomorrow. So for us, this meant that tomorrow's laundry was always started, that we never went to bed with dishes in the sink. The dishwasher was running and ready for the first chore session, that everybody went room to room and picked up anything that they had out before we went to bed. We never let the kids go to bed with big messes, unless it was something they set up that they were in the middle of. We definitely let that happen because we love curiosity and creativity. That anything is pre-packed for tomorrow that needs to be. That we based our bedtime according to rise time or vice versa. And so we wanted to be sure that the night before was set up. Now, another thing that you can do the night before that's really effective for having a good day tomorrow is take that weekly list. Usually with your constances, those will fall automatically, like we automatically had a library day. We automatically had, appointment day or grocery day or whatever. But with that weekly list that you made and you put those ABCs beside, look through that weekly list and find 5 things that are A's that you can get done tomorrow. I call these my foremost 5. Jot these down. Jot these 5 things down that you're going to squeeze into tomorrow that's not your dailies. It's not your regular school block. It's not your regular, I read aloud with my child. He reads to me. I have my math meeting with this child. I have language meetings with these 3. I do unit studies with these. We do morning chores. We do noontime chores. We do story time in the afternoon. Not those things. Something above and beyond. Because what we often do is we don't want to do the dailies, and I understand all about that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a second. And we don't want to do the regular routine because we want to do the big things because they're unique, they're different, they're more special. Sometimes they're not as difficult, and sometimes they're just plain more fun. So take that list and get your foremost 5. Jot that down on a sticky note, stick it on tomorrow's lesson plan, and squeeze those 5 things in. Don't try to squeeze everything in. Don't become overwhelmed because you can't get all of your daily stuff in and that big weekly list or all these pressures that are on you. Just get that foremost 5 down. All right, now digging into the morning. Looking, first of all, at your school in the morning. First thing that I would like to say about scheduling and organizing for school in the morning is a mindset that you need to try to have with your children. And that is that school is your child's occupation. That is that school is what your children are supposed to be about. Now, depending on where you live, you may or may not have to turn in things to your school district. You may or may not have accountability built in through your homeschool provider or through your home visits or whatever, depending on where you homeschool. But it doesn't matter whether you have those types of outside accountability in place, because you need to have the accountability within yourself and spread among your family that school is your child's occupation. That is, that school is what he's supposed to be about. That it's not, the daytime is for learning and working, and evenings are for family and fun. And during the daytime, this is what we are about. And so I hope that out of everything, you put a big A beside this if you are having problems with this, and that you and your husband will have a talk with your children and say, we have not been prioritizing school, if this is what's been happening to you. That we have not been showing you how important your education is and how important what we do during the day really is. And that school is your occupation. It's not time to do whatever you want and then squeeze in school here and there. It's not your time to be off doing anything you want and then just reporting in when you get a school item or two done. School is your child's occupation. Next in the morning, I love that old quote by Mark Twain, where he says, eat a frog in the morning and nothing worse will happen to you that day. Now, some people don't agree with this. They say, why would you want to do the worst thing that you could do first thing in the morning? Don't you want to start your day out with cheery things, with bright things? And to that I say, you know what? I want to eat the frog. I want to get some of those things out of the way that are the most difficult for me. Some of the things that I have the most trouble getting around to. Some of the things that I dread the most. For me, that's exercise. Just be honest. I want to get that out of the way. I want to not have to face that later in the day when I'm more tired. I don't want to have to keep thinking, oh yeah, I still have to do my exercises. I still have to do my strength training. I want that done first thing in the morning. Now, this is something that you can do for yourself, but you can also teach your children to do in creating their independent work list. Ask your children, what are the most difficult things that you would like to get out of the way? If you could get them done first thing, you could get them done quickly, what would those be? And then put those at the top of his independent list so that he can get those things out of the way first. So eat a frog in the morning. These are the most difficult things, and these are the things that I like to get done first. Next is a tip that we learned 30 years ago at maybe 28 years ago at a Greg Harris workshop. And in it, he said, attach important things to something that is already in your schedule. With that, he said that we should take whatever is already in place, which he said is obviously 3 meals a day, usually a snack, rising time, and bedtime. So those 6 times, and attach something that's important to you to those times. And this helped us more than probably anything else that we learned early on in scheduling. And that was that we came home and we attached things into our schedule that were important to something that was already in place. So around the breakfast table, we had devotions. After breakfast, we had breakfast cleanup and morning read aloud, unit studies, Bible studies, whatever. Before lunch, we attached a chore session. After lunch, we attached a story time. And we just kept attaching and attaching things that were already in our schedule. And it's so much easier to get something done when it's attached to something that you're already doing. Because then, before you know it, that becomes part of that scheduled item, that time frame. It just becomes a part of that. Next is block schedules. I talked about those just a little bit ago, but one of the nice things about block schedules for kids is that they can see at a glance, these are my priorities for this time period. And it's just super helpful for that. If you are able to do anything in the morning to get dinner going, do that. Whether it is getting out a freezer entree, putting something in the crock pot, even if it's just defrosting meat. One little step towards the evening meal will help you so much, because if the meat is defrosted, let's face it, you have to do something with it, right? If the freezer meal is out, you know what you're having that day. And so it's easier to make the salad, to add the side dishes, whatever. All right, next is about setting aside time for school. This goes along with school is your child's occupation. but it's also your duty, right? It's also your duty. And so with that, setting aside time for school, you know, not just your one-on-one meetings with your kids or your small group meetings, but being available during school time to them. So many of us as moms nowadays, we work part-time jobs while we homeschool. Some moms even work full-time while they homeschool. And many, many mothers who homeschool have home businesses. And so it's really, really easy to get caught up in doing all of those businesses, but not being available for our children. And I see a really sad trend in a lot of bloggers and other mompreneurs who they start doing a business while they homeschool. And first of all, they start teaching about doing that. And it's really cool. They're teaching other moms how to do it. And then 6 months, a year, 2 years later, I discovered, and this has happened like 6 times with people that I followed in blogs, that then I go back and I find out that their kids are in school, that the business has overtaken their school. And instead of homeschooling now, they just do their business. And, you know, I think that home businesses are great. I have 3 of them and I love, love, love working at home. But when they force us to put our kids in school, or they force us to ignore our kids when we should be schooling them, I think we really need to focus on our priorities there. We will have time after our kids' schooling is not so intense to focus on our own work and our own jobs. And so, you know, yes, work those small businesses, work those home businesses, but don't do it to the exclusion of school. All right, so be on the same schedule together during daytime. I like to keep everybody on the same schedule. In other words, I don't like for some of my kids to be doing school in the morning, and then some of them played in the morning and they did school in the afternoon or whatever. I like for us to be on the same schedule so that when we had meetings together, everybody was already doing school. It wasn't like I had to pull anybody away from anything. Next, always do your dailies. With this, I'm talking about your personal dailies, your home dailies, your school dailies, your business dailies. Now, I have a lot of problems. I used to have a lot of problems with my dailies. And I would have so much trouble with my dailies that I would be the kind of person who wouldn't do my dailies. And my husband would call me the closet lady, because when he would come home from work, I would take him by the hand and show him all the closets that I cleaned out, the organizational systems I put in place, the projects that I did. But, you know, he was, you know, stepping over children in pajamas and you know, making his way through laundry, and the dishes were stacked on the counters and stuff. And I wasn't doing the dailies because I always liked doing the projects. I always liked doing the big things because they were more fun. And the dailies were always there. And so it took me a while, but eventually I learned how to not do anything that wasn't a daily. And this is when I really started having success in homeschooling and in home management, where I would not organize a closet, organize a bookcase, organize a file system. I would not do any of those things until I had done my dailies. And so I made my list of dailies, and there are blog posts about you can search any of this at the blog, and there's a blog post about it, or a podcast, or a video, or all of the above. But what I did was I made a personal daily list, a home daily list, a school daily list, and now a business daily list. And those things became my daily to-do list. And maybe I would do my foremost 5 for the next day, but I wouldn't do anything but those things. And once I got a handle on those dailies, I became a successful home manager. I became a successful homeschooler because I read aloud with my new readers twice every day. I had my language arts meetings. We had our chore sessions. We did dishes and laundry and trash, that's number 19 there, twice a day, no matter what. And so because of that, everything else ran more smoothly. And I could also train the children in doing their dailies for school, for personal, as well as for household and chores. And everything got done so much better. So if you're having trouble getting things done because you keep on going with the tyranny of the urgent, and you have projects and those things get in your way, if you scale back and do only the dailies for a month, you'll be surprised that you can start putting back in the weeklies. You can start putting back in projects, because once you're successful at dailies, you can do anything. That's the thing about it. When I see moms starting businesses and things, and I have a Plexus business, and I have several homeschooling moms on my team, and so once they get a handle on their dailies and they're always doing their dailies, then it's so easy to be successful in the other things. And one reason why I want homeschooling moms on my Plexus team is because after homeschooling for so many years and being successful at that, once you do dailies, you can do anything. You can be anything you want to be when you grow up, because you have, without any oversight, without any accountability of somebody, a boss you have to answer to every hour, without anybody else making your schedule for you and following up with you, if after a period of homeschooling you have implemented your daily routine in such a way that you complete your dailies every day, you can do absolutely anything you want. And so doing the dailies is going to make you the best homeschooler you can be. I already talked a little bit about your successful chore schedule. Ordering your subjects by needs of your family. You know, when we were first homeschooling, everybody always said, get the hardest things out of the way first. Get the hardest things out of the way first. And, you know, so everybody did that. But now that we know that everybody isn't the same and that not, you know, there isn't all fits one type of schedule. Now see what kind of family you are. Are your kids fresher earlier, that you want to do that intense language arts meeting or that intense math meeting? You want the meeting block to be early? Are your kids, you know, still kind of sleepy and they're better off just coloring in their educational coloring books while you read aloud for unit studies? So you want that to be your first block? Do you want to have your one-on-one meetings during toddlers and babies' nap times? Then do whatever you put your subjects in, whatever schedule, whatever order works for you. Next, besides your dailies and your foremost 5, is the timely task. This tip is to do whatever is due next. So whatever is next on the list, you have to do this or else you're going to pay a library fine. You won't be able to, you have to pay your dentist bill because you didn't cancel it in 24 hours, whatever that might be. Do whatever that is. That's what those timely tasks are. And sometimes I'll just put a TT beside something and I'll know that I need to do that today regardless. The next task has to do with those times when you just don't feel like doing anything. Right? We all have those times. And that is supposed to actually say just do it with a slash through it. But I don't know how to slash through anything. So my tech girl can fix that for us. But just do it. That old Nike mantra, just do it. Let's not just do it. Let's just do something. And I think this has saved me from really inefficiency, and also just from not being organized and really just plain laziness. This has saved me from that a lot, because there are a lot of times when it's not that we don't want to get something done, and it's not that we don't want to you know, do what we're supposed to do. We don't want to do this, whatever this might be right now, right? And so what I do is, if I'm in the middle of something and now I have all these businesses that I'm running all day, I'm blogging, I'm writing curriculum, I'm writing ebooks, I'm the Plexus ambassador, I have my Plexus team, so I'm doing all of these things all day long. And everything that I've learned from homeschooling comes into play. That everything I've done for the past 32 years is what makes me be able to get so much done every day now as a mompreneur. But there are times that I'm looking at this going, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And so what we end up doing is we end up doing nothing. Or we end up, you know, playing on the computer or playing a game or, you know, just surfing the web or, you know, surfing Facebook or whatever. And so when I don't want to do whatever it is, rather than not do anything, I just say, I don't want to do this, but I can do something. And that solves my problem every time, because it's not that I don't want to do anything or get anything done. It's that I don't want to do that right now. And so with that, it could be anything. Maybe I don't feel like, you know, outlining a blog post right now. It's just, it takes too much concentration. My brain is fried from some other things that I've done. So instead I'll go out and test my new recipe. Or maybe I don't feel like making a video for my Plexus team because I have to fix my hair and I don't really feel like being on the camera right now. And you know, I just don't, not in the mood for that. So instead I will just go do mail outs, right? So it's not that I don't do anything. It's that I just choose something different to do, something equally productive, something that still needs done, but not the thing that I was supposed to be doing. And that has helped me a lot. I'm definitely going to run out of time. So with this 10 fast family tips, you can look this up at the blog, but I'm just going to mention these fast, like in, 10 tips in 1 minute or something. The first one is a timer burst. And this is where you set the timer for X amount of time and you all just go. And this has really been implemented in a lot of ways. For one thing, we have done dads in the driveway blitzes, where when we had like an 1/8 of a mile lane, the kids would say, Dad just turned in, and we would all run and straighten everything up. And oh my word, what you can get done in literally 2 minutes while Dad pulls in the driveway and gathers the stuff and walks in is just amazing, especially as the children learn to work fast and they learn the meaning of blitzes and so forth. Another thing is setting the timer. Another thing we would do is we would do blitzes or bursts for periods of time for one length of a song, for one side of an adventure in Odyssey, whatever it might be. We would have these timer bursts and we would just all get as much done as we possibly could. With horizontal surfaces, this we still use. My husband just 2 days ago, I said, what are you doing? And he said, horizontal surfaces. And I knew exactly what he meant. He meant that he was going through the house and clearing off everything that didn't belong there on any surface. A lot of times we want to clean because we think cleaning is the answer to a clean home. But more often than not, it's not really the cleaning that's a problem. It's really the clutter. And so we had our horizontal surface blitzes or horizontal surface times where we would do nothing but clean all that off. 8 entrees. What this means is that you pick your family's 8 favorite entrees or your 8 fastest entrees, and you get all the ingredients on for these 8 things, and you put them in a basket in your pantry, in a certain basket in your deep freeze. You put the recipes all together, or you put them on the inside of your cupboard doors, or maybe they're just things you remember, like how to make spaghetti and meatballs. Maybe you always have meatballs in your freezer. And you have these 8 entrees, and they're always there. You always have the stuff for them, and you can always make them quickly, no matter what. Room to room is another thing that we implemented, and we often did this before cleaning. We would say, okay, we're going to have a 15-minute cleaning blitz in 5 minutes, but for right now, I'm setting the timer for 5 minutes, and we're gonna have a room to room time. So start in the living room, work your way clockwise through the house, and pick up anything that's yours. 2 daily chore sessions, I already talked about that. Favorite tasks, a lot of times with that, just do something. I would just know what were my favorite tasks, and I would work on those rather than whatever was there. Successful next day routine. I made a night before check sheet, and I followed that check sheet to be sure that I had a successful day the next day. The next one is 2 times your age, and this is where we would have a blitz that was called 2 times your age or 3 times your age. And we often did this when we had children over, like when we had small group. My husband would go into the big toy room that we had, and he would say, okay guys, this is your 5-minute warning. In 5 minutes, we're having 2 times your age. The kids always knew what this meant. This meant that in 5 minutes, he was gonna come back and everybody was gonna stop playing, and they were going to pick up 2 times their age throughout the entire toy room. And everybody would just, if they were 5, they would just go around counting 10 things and pick it all up. And it was just so successful. I have somebody who just recently wrote on my Facebook timeline, I was just thinking about you guys today and thinking about Ray's 2 times your age and how much that helped the kids pick up after small group and how much they like that and how much, and it just warmed my heart to think, 25 years later that somebody's remembering that. 5-minute strategy, I can do anything for 5 minutes. So that is all that I have time for right now, but I do want to encourage you to look these things up at the blog. Go to Character Inc. or Raising Kids with Character. It's all the same. the blog. We also have a store with all my 70, well, not the language arts books that I wrote for another publisher, but all the ones that I've written for our small press, Character Ink Press. They are all there. I believe there are, I don't know, 45, no, about 55 total books there. Some downloadable language arts products, some downloadable writing books, and then our whole Character Quality Language Arts series and our whole Meaningful Composition series. Those are all there. Free samples, that's all there at the store. But at the blog, Character Ink Blog or Raising Kids with Character, you can find blog posts, Wondering Wednesday podcast episodes, Wondering Wednesday videos, all about everything, single strategy that I've talked about here on this video today. So I hope that you will join me there and that I can help you in your homeschooling and in your parenting. Thank you so much for joining me.